Hi guys, in today's video I will be walking you through an end-to-end ELT pipeline process with the help of DBT. So let's get to it. Alright guys, so like I mentioned in today's video I will be walking you through an end-to-end ELT pipeline process using DBT. Okay, so this is the data flow that we will be using and basically the pipeline that we will be building in this video. So we will have data coming from a source and we will load that data to Amazon S3, and then from S3 we will load this data to Snowflake staging or a raw layer, and then from there we will have DBT process this data or transform this data and eventually write the transformed data to another Snowflake table, and then from there we will have one of the PI tools pick this data, and in this case I will be using Tableau. Okay, so if you have another PI tool you can experiment with it, but in this video I will be using Tableau to pick the data from the transformed table in Snowflake. Okay, so this is the pipeline that we'll be building in this video, and in particular we will be focusing on incremental models. So in DBT, incremental models are used for processing only new or updated data since the last time it was run, and this is really useful when you have large data sets where processing the entire data set will be inefficient and time consuming. So if you have large data set and you don't want to reprocess the entire data set, then you can choose incremental models in DBT. Okay, so this is again going to save you a lot of cost because you are reducing the amount of data that you're processing, and this can lead to lower computing and storage costs. Okay, and then the other benefit of incremental models is performance. So incremental models are faster to execute than full refresh models. So remember, DBT, every time it creates your model or materializes, it has to refresh the table from scratch. So if you have millions of records and DBT has to create the table from scratch every time, then you will run into performance issues. But with incremental models, all you have to do is basically process the change data. Okay, so then your performance is going to really improve. Okay, so performance wise, incremental models is really good on that. And then lastly, we do have efficiency. So only the new or change data is processed, so and this can greatly reduce time and resources required to run your models. Okay, so these are the three benefits of using incremental models in DBT. Okay, so let's go now ahead and get into our demo. So like I mentioned, this is the flowchart that we'll be using. We will have our data coming from the source. We will load this data to S3. Then from S3 we load it to Snowflake, transform it using DBT, and get a Tableau to read the data from the transformed table in Snowflake. Okay, remember again, DBT is not an ingesting tool or is not an ingestion tool. Okay, DBT is not an ingestion tool. You only use it to transform your data once you've loaded it into your data warehouse or database. Okay, so in this case we will be using some other tools to bring our data all the way to Snowflake, and then from there DBT will do its magic, transform the data, make our life much easier, and then we will have our transformed data ready for consumption by the PI team. All right, so let's get to it. So I will quickly show you the tools that I'm using. So for the data that I'm getting from the source, I'm using a Python code to generate fake data, basically just the Faker library. So I have this Faker library and I have pandas and Poto tree. So these three libraries will enable me to interact with S3, and Faker basically will create the data and load it to S3. So I do have a Python code here that will generate this data and load it to S3. And then once we get to S3, we will load this data to Snowflake. So I do have my Snowflake warehouse here, and we will load this data to Snowflake staging table. And then from staging table, we will now create our transformations using DBT, and then write the transformed data to Tableau. Okay, so that's the flow. So just to walk you through again, we have our Python code that is generating the data, pushing it to S3. We have that data from S3 going to Snowflake, and then DBT will take it from there and do the transformations. once the transformations are complete, we will have Tableau pick that data. All right, guys. So let's get to it. So the first step that we will need to do is to generate our data. So basically, we need to create this data and ingest it to S3. So the tools for that again is you know. So there are two ways that you can go about this. You can basically have a CSV file that you manually add the data to, and then update that CSV data and load it to Snowflake. It doesn't matter really how you get your data to Snowflake, as long as you have the data that you're bringing. And you can also use a file from your local environment. Just create a sample file, as long as you have the data to play with. But I just wanted to show you something that resembles industry, or what's done in industry. If you have a job in production environment. So basically what people do is you ingest data from either RDBMS databases. And if we go back to our diagram here once again, you will see that generally the flow of ELT, and ELT in full means extract, load, and transform. So you will have some tools that is extracting your data. So you can be getting data from APIs or from MySQL database, coming through DMS to S3. And if you're using some other platform, it doesn't matter how you get your data. Okay, the idea is you have your data coming to a staging layer or a storage layer, from where you can pick and do the transformations. So in this case, we assume that we are getting data from a streaming source or a CDC source. So if you have MySQL database, or if you have Postgre database, or if you have APIs, we are assuming that we are loading data from those sources. We stage them in S3 as our data lake, and then from there we use Snowflake now to process this data. So now this will be, if you think of the medallion architecture, so this will be our storage, our data lake. Okay, so S3 will be our data lake, and we will put our data into staging layer, which will be our prawns, and then we do our transformations, and you can have silver layer to do some of that transformations. And then eventually you have your code layer where you have your transformed data and business is ready to use that. Okay, so in the transformed code layer, that's where you have your business logic written in, and basically you have your complete and final table ready to be used for business purposes. Okay, so then the reason why I didn't want to use a simple file is because I wanted to simulate to you something that is almost real time, and what is done in the industry. Okay, so that's why I chose the help of Python. You could use, if you have a really robust process, you can even use Kinesis to stream data, or you set DMS to get data from a transactional database and write it to S3, or you can use event-based processes. It doesn't matter how you get your data. Okay, the idea is you want to get your data to S3, and then from there DBT will take it over from there. All right, so let's go now to our code, and this is my Jupyter notebook here, or a notebook in VS Code. And basically I'm importing the libraries that I'm using here. So Podo3 is a Python library that will interact with AWS services, and Pandas is your library that lets you interact with data tables and things like that. And Feka library will help you to generate fake data. So I just wanted to create to generate fake data for this. And basically you're initializing your clients here, and we will go ahead and create our data here now. So we are creating orders table. With these fields, we have the order ID, customer ID, and these are unique. Order date, status, product ID, quantity, and all of this. And eventually, there's a calculated column here for order amount, and we will write this to a data frame and load this data eventually to S3. Okay, so I just put here my bucket in S3 and the name of the file that will be created in that bucket. So if I just go and switch over to AWS, and I will go to S3. So in my S3 bucket, the bucket that I've created for this is this one for CK data deck. So I've created this bucket, and inside here I have a folder for orders. So this is where I will be loading my generated data. Okay, And once we do that, we will go ahead and load this data to Snowflake. So I'm going to delete this so that I show you how to generate this, and we'll just run that Python code. It will generate the data and put it here. So I'm just going to delete this. Okay, so our pocket now is empty. We don't have data there. And then from there we will so this will upload the data to that pocket and basically create the data for you. Okay, so we will have our data here now. Then from there, what we need to do is we need to go to Snowflake, and we need to do two things. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create our table. Okay, so I created a database here called DBT ELT and staging layer. So this is where our data from S3 will be staged. So this will be our raw or bronze layer. Okay, and with Snowflake, you do have, I think you have to create a table beforehand. And this is what I've done. So I've just basically created a table called orders, and I've put the fields here that we specified in our code right here. So we have order ID, customer ID, and all of these fields. So this is basically what I've done here. And just go ahead and create this table. So I'm going to create this table. Okay. All right, so this table is created now, and the next thing that we will need to do is we need to create our stage in Snowflake. So basically a stage in Snowflake is where you load your data from files coming from external sources or internal sources. So if you have data from S3 or a GCS or a Microsoft Azure containers, you do need to create a stage in Snowflake so that you can stage your data here, and then from there you can load it to Snowflake. So the next thing then is we need to create a stage, and I'm going to go back here, and we need to create a stage. So before you create this is a query to create a stage, but let me just see if there's any stage currently. So this is a stage that exists, and I'm just going to drop this. I think I can drop it, drop stage and my S3 stage. Okay, so you can run SQL queries to create your stage. So I'm going to, so I've dropped this stage now, and if you run it again, you should not be able to see any stage. So now we don't have a stage, and now I want to create a stage in my Snowflake where my data will be getting temporarily stored from S3. So to do that, this is the command that you can use. So you need your URL and the credentials here. So you need the key, the AWS key, and AWS secret key. So these keys you get when you create your user in AWS. The very first time you create a user, IAM user, you get these keys. So I think there's also another way that you can create your stage without using keys, and I think it's called storage in the creation. So you can create storage in the creation, and all you have to do is basically use a storage IAM role after that. So you don't have to use your keys. And in future videos, I will go in detail into how you can create this in the creations and staging. But in this video, I just wanted to show you what you need to do in order to load your data to Snowflake. So so then let's go ahead and create our stage, and I will name this stage my S3 stage, and this will be created in DBT ELT staging. Okay, so if you go to staging and you see your stages, we have our stage now available. Okay, and this staging will be pointing to this S3 bucket. Okay, so any data that we'll have here will be also stored in this stage. All right, so we have our stage now available, and the next thing that we'll need to do is to copy the data. So we need to copy data now from our S3 into this staging layer. And the way you copy it, you say copy into orders from this staging. Remember, the staging will be having, so this will point to the data in your S3 location. So all we have to do is then just reference this staging and say which file we want to load. So what we will do here now is we will want to load to generate our data to S3, and then go ahead and load that data to Snowflake. Okay, so let's check our table that we created. So the table that we created should be empty, so I'm just going to query that table, and it's staging. So if we say select count star from orders, okay, like that. So this should be empty. Okay, so this table is empty, and now what we need to do is we go back to our Python code. All right, so I'm just going to run all of this, and this will create 3,000 records. Okay, so we are generating 3,000 fake records, and this will be loaded into our S3 layer. So let's go ahead and do this. So I'm just going to hit run here, run all of this, and this will run all of our code and generate this data and load it to S3. Okay, so it completed without an error. And if we go now to S3, we should be able to see some data in our bucket. There we go. Okay, so we see data here now, and I am going to load this data to Snowflake now. Okay, so we'll go back to Snowflake, go to stage, and we do have our stage created. So that file now should be available here, and I'm going to load that file right here. So we are going to just copy this, and this will copy it into our staging. So just copy into, and it will insert it to our orders table from this stage. All right, so it's as simple as that. So let's go ahead and do that. Just hit it. Okay, so seems like there's an error here, and I think this file is not an option, so I'm just going to move this one up here. I'll just put this one right here like this, and I will comment it from here, and I will run it again. Okay, so this should be able to load our data now. So you can see we have loaded all of the 3,000 rows that we loaded to S3. Okay, so we're skipping the header, and the type of the file that we're loading again is CSV. So if you go now and you count your records in the staging layer, we should have 3,000 records right here. Okay, and then you can also just quickly see how this data looks like. All right, so if you count, you just select this table. We need a data warehouse here, so I'm just going to take this one. All right, there we go. So this is how our data looks. So we have our order ID, custom ID, and at the end here we have our CDC timestamp. So this CDC timestamp is important because for our incremental loads we want to use this CDC. So basically this will be the time that will show us when this record was last changed. So we load this into our database or a Snowflake warehouse, and then the next time we process, we only want where CDC timestamp has changed. Okay, so this is now our first page of records. And now let's go back to our DBT. So we go back to DBT now, and we can process that first page of records and load it, process it, transform it and load it into our Snowflake table. Okay, so this is the model that I've created for you. Again, I'm going to put this in my GitHub account if you want to take a look into the code. So you don't have to pause this video and type all of this, but I just want to walk you through the process because it's faster if I'm not typing, for you to just follow it, and then you can go and look at the code. Okay, so this is my Snowflake project, and I have and if you want to know how you create this, I did a video where I went through the process of setting up connection for DBT core. This is DBT core, so I'm not paying for this. This is the open source free version of DBT. So this is a project that I created, and I'll put the link for that video in the description so that you can take a look at it if you want to go through the process of setting it up. But basically it creates this structure for you, and we will be focusing mainly in models folder, because this is where your select queries will go. So here I have 3 files here. I have the schema, which defines my source data. So in this schema, I'm basically pointing to my source in Snowflake, and I'm naming this source Snowflake source. We want to get the data from staging, and we want to get orders table from staging. So this is basically the orders table, and these are the associated columns. Okay, so these are the columns, and in DBT you can put all of these tests and descriptions, this for documentation purposes. So for example, I'm saying that this order ID is a unique field and it should not be null. The same thing with custom ID. So if there are some columns in your table that you want to test and make sure that they are coming in as unique and null, then you can put them here, and DBT will do the work for you when you do your tests. Okay, so these are my fields, and my model is this one here. So I'm going to only pull this model as incremental one, the orders one. Okay, so this is I just specified here. All right, and now the stage orders is basically my staging query, and I've materialized this as ephemeral because I don't want this to be created in the database. So this will not be created in the database, but it will be interpolated as a CTE. And I did this because I just wanted to change some column names. So I've done some transformations here where I have converted some of the columns. So for example, I have converted a product ID because it was coming in as a variable, as a string. So I have sorry, for this quantity, I've turned it into an integer or numeric. Same thing with price. And for the total amount, I've changed this to decimal. And for the CDC timestamp, I just changed it to a timestamp because it was also coming in as a string. So just doing some basic transformations here. And this is again why DBT is useful, because you can write your transformations using SQL, and DBT will do the work for you. So this is the first layer of our transformations. And what so if you see here, you're basically saying this is a CTE selecting from your source, and this is a change a templating. And what it's saying here is basically saying that I want you to go to my YAML file, go to a source named Snowflake source, and grab me a table called orders right here. So if you go to your YAML file then and scroll up here, you will see that we have Snowflake source here, and inside there we have orders table. So when this is compiled, it's going to be DBT will know what to do, and it's going to point to the exact database and the table name in Snowflake. Okay, so that's really powerful. So DBT will do the work for you. So you just specify here, and it will do the work for you. Okay, so I have this first model here where I'm doing my transformations, and now when we come to our incremental table or incremental model, this is what I've done. Okay, so I'm basically put the configurations up here, and I am materializing it as an incremental model. So this is very important. Behind the wood, this will be created as a table, but if you want to create the model as incremental, then you have to put this incremental configuration here. You don't have to put it inside the model. You can also do it inside here in the YAML file. So if you go here, you can do something like this: config, and do something like that. Okay, so you can materialize it as incremental right here, like so. All right, so you can also do it this way, but I just put it inside the model. It doesn't matter, it will still work. You can also put it here in the project as well, so you can also materialize it here as well. But I just find it easier to put it inside each project, so that because different models will be created differently, so I prefer this one much easier, but it doesn't matter for you. You can choose whichever way you prefer. And then this unique key will be useful if we have updates. So imagine you have an order ID that has been updated. If you don't put this, then when incremental model is created, or when this model is created, the changed order will be appended. and usually we don't want that. We want the record to be updated also in our target database. So you need to put this unique key so that when a new record comes in, or when an updated record comes in, then it's going to look at the order ID, says that, oh, it already exists in our database, but the value has changed, so we just want to update that in our database. So yeah, this is also important for your incremental model. Okay, and you scroll down here. This is my city again, and I'm basically selecting everything or all the fields from staging orders. So basically this model here, and you use ref for that. So ref is a function in DBT that you use when you want to call other models. Okay, so this is a dependency. So what I'm saying here is basically my incremental model depends on this staging. So, and this staging depends on my source data. So this staging is getting the data from the source, and this model, the incremental one, will get it from the staging one. And for the purposes of this, let me actually rename this, and I will name this one incremental, like so. Okay, and what I will do here then is I will alias this as orders. Okay, so when this table is created in the source, I don't, because if you don't alias it, then by default it will be created as incremental orders. This will be the name. So the name of the model will be the name of the table that will be created in the target database when this DBT model runs. So I'm saying just change the name for this and create a table called orders in the database. All right, and then now you scroll down here. This is the important section now. And this is where your incremental logic comes in. So what we're saying here is, if you're running this model as incremental, so basically you want only to process the change records, then you are going to get your data from the source and basically process where change time is greater than the max time in your existing database. So this query here is basically saying this change time is from my incoming data. I want to insert only to my existing table. Okay, so this refers to this table orders. The very first time we run this table will not exist, so it's going to run everything. But once it's created, then now this table will exist, and what DBT will do is, when you're running it as incremental, it will take the field change time, which is coming from right here, and it is going to say, I only want to process and insert into the database only records that are greater than the max change time that we have in the existing database. All right, you can use this has to be a timestamp that you can use to reference or to use in your incremental. It can be updated at, it can be changed at, as long as it's a date object or timestamp. So for me, this is going to be a timestamp, and I'm going to just filter for this. And now this incremental model will only filter and apply where this is true. Okay, and if it's not true, then it's going to basically refresh the table or do nothing. Okay, so for example, if you run this model twice and the data has not changed, then it's not going to do anything. All right, so that is the incremental piece right here. And basically towards the end here, I'm just selecting all the fields that I need, and I'm adding invocation ID here. This is for logging purposes, because I want to see this page ID is, when you run it, you will get a similar page ID for all of the records the very first time you run it. The second time you run it, it will be a different page ID. So we just want to get a page ID so that we can see if our records were inserted properly. Okay, so that is this incremental model right here. And now that we have this one ready, the next thing that we'll do then is go ahead and create and run our DBT model. Okay, so I have to activate my virtual environment because that's where I have my DBT stored. So I'm just going to do DBT v and v, and actually it's dev v and v bin activate. Okay, so this has activated my Python virtual environment. And when we run this model, it will be created in the directory that you specified in your profiles. So if I go to my profiles, DBT profiles, if you see here, the schema that I chose when I was setting up is this space. So this is your target schema where your transform data will be written to. So we have a schema called base, and the database will be ELT. So if you go back to Snowflake, and if you expand this, I've created also this schema here called base, and I'm going to actually drop that table, DBT ELT drop table, and we are going to drop base dot orders. Okay. All right. So this table is now dropped, and when we create or when we run our DBT, this table will be created inside order. So this is where our transform data will go to. All right. So this order table, where is it? Did I close it? Incremental orders right here. So this is our final table, right? This is our transformed table, and this is very basic, right? You can have joins and some other aggregations that you do have, but it doesn't matter. I just wanted to show you the basic concept of it. So this will be a final table, and it will be created in our base model. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to do dbt run, and I'll just do run, and this should run everything and create it in our target database. Okay, so we need to switch over to our Snowflake project and run that command. Okay. All right. So as you can see, this one is starting and it's creating in base, and now it successfully created our table. So this is incremental model, and we have the schema created as space. I mean the schema where it's loaded to is space, and the table name is order. So if you go back here now to our database, you expand this, let's refresh it, you expand it, and you will see orders table right here. And you can also see now that we also have that batch ID, and we do have the other fields as well. Okay, so you can inspect this table. Just go ahead and run some basic queries, and you can see how your data looks like. Okay. All right, so this is your change time, and this is your page ID. And I mentioned that this is this page ID is important. So if we just query the unique page IDs for this, you can see that we only have one page ID, and we loaded all the records. Okay, so now we have our first record of data loaded to our table. Okay, so now that's the beginning, right? You've loaded your first data, and now in future you have like 300,000 records coming, or 500,000 records coming, or 20 or 3 or 1 record. We only want to process those changed records or the new records that you have not already loaded into your database. So let's go ahead and do that now. And to do that, we will go back to our Python generator, and we will load another set of data, and I'm going to load this to a second file, and let's increase this value. Let's load now 5,000 records. Okay, so we'll generate 5,000 records, and we will send it to S3. Okay, so I'm just going to create it, and now if we go to S3 and refresh our bucket, we should have another file here. Okay, so there's another file here created, and as you can see, it has bigger size, so definitely we should have more records there. And now if we go back to Snowflake, we go to our staging, we need to copy that data again into our staging table. Okay, so I'm going to change the file here that we want to load the data from to this fake CDC order data number 2, and I will basically load this again. So I'm just going to copy that and load it into the database, and you can see here the status loaded, and we loaded all of those records 5,000. All right, and then basically we repeat the same thing. Now what we will do is we go back to our incremental model, and basically we need to run the second time. Now what you will expect to see when you run it the second time is that it will show you in the status here that the number of records that were loaded in this case should be 5,000, right? Because those are the new records that have come in since the last time that we loaded our data. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what happens when we do that. So I'm just going to do that. Just run again the model, and we should be able to see that. There we go. All right, so you can see now that the second time we ran, we only loaded the records that came in 5,000. Okay, now if you didn't have incremental in place, what will have happened here is it will basically load all of your data that was in staging and insert it. So it will recreate the entire table. And what that means is if you go to your staging, right? If you go to your staging, okay, we are in staging here. If you select here now, we have about, I believe, 8,000 records, because the first time we loaded 3,000 and added 5,000. So what DBT will do is if you did not specify incremental piece, then it will load the entire data from your staging. And imagine now a situation where you have like, 1 billion records in your staging, because I've seen situations where we have terabytes of data, right? You have 1 billion records in your staging. If you don't have this filter in place and you want to load that data, then it's going to be very costly. It's going to take time, and it's going to cost you money. So we don't want to do that. And if you were to write SQL statement that does that, you'll have to come up with a very long SQL query. But DBT will help you do it seamlessly and in a very easy way, and it will handle it for you and make your life much easier. So you can see now we loaded 5,000 and we have only processed those records. Okay, and if we go to our order table now, right here, okay, so let's count. Actually, let's check the page IDs now. We should have 2 here. Okay, the first one should have loaded 3,000. Okay, so this is the first one. It only loaded the first page was 3,000. The second one is 5,000. Okay, so let's count our orders here. We should also have 8,000 records here as well. There we go. All right, so that is how you do that. And maybe let's do the last bit of it. Let's load another set of data. Let's say this time we only had 20 records coming. Okay, like so. And let's make this file number 3 and run this. Okay, so this will run. Okay, and now we have another file here. Okay, so we have file number 3. All right, and we will go ahead and do the same thing. We will copy this to our stage, and basically, I mean, it's already copied in stage, but we will just, we'll copy it into our staging layer in Snowflake right here. So I'm just going to do this. Copy this into staging. We'll make this 3 and run it. Okay, so this should only run 20 records now. There we go. And let's go ahead and run our DBT for the last time. Okay, so this time we also expect to only see 20 records in our dashboard right here. There we go. Okay, so it only processed the incoming change records and loaded to our database, and we can also query the page ID for that and see if we have difference now. There we go. So you can see that in the third run we also loaded 20 records. All right, so that is how you load your data incrementally from your source or from your database. Okay, so now you can have a Airflow DAG now that will orchestrate this. Basically, push your data from the source to S3 to Snowflake and orchestrate end-to-end this process. Okay, and I think in future I might make another video where I go through that process of going end-to-end, including Airflow. Okay, so now that we have our data in the staging layer, I mean in the transformed table, and this is not super fancy, right? This is just very basic. I mean, I didn't do any transformations, I didn't do any joins, I didn't do any aggregations. But let's assume that we are very smart and we have done all of that work, and our boss is very happy and he's saying, hey, now I want to move this data to the PI team and I want them to go ahead and create their tables. So how do we do that? So from here now we have our data transformed ready in our base table. So we can tell the PI folks now to go ahead and take this data and run with it, right? So here is my Tableau desktop. I just downloaded this, and I think I do get I got 14 days of trial, and I think after that I will have to pay, or I guess I have 13 days left now. But yeah, you can try the same thing, or you can pay for the license if you want, or if you have a Tableau that somebody gives the license, or whichever PI tool that you use for that your dashboards. Again, I'm using Tableau here, but basically from here we will connect to our Snowflake. So you go to the server section here, and a Snowflake is showing up for me here. But if it doesn't show up, then you can just go here and search for Snowflake. Snowflake right here, and it's going to ask you to download additional ODBC drivers. If it's not there, go ahead and just download it and it should work for you. But once you have that, then you can put in your information to connect to Snowflake. This is my server name. I'm going to use account admin for the user, for the role, and then I will use username and password, and this is my username and this will be my password. I'm just going to enter my password right here. And we will sign in. So if everything is fine, we should be able to sign in to our Snowflake, and we did. So we are able to connect to our Snowflake, and let's go ahead and choose a warehouse. I'm going to use this demo warehouse. Let's choose the database where our transformed data now lives, which is DBT ELT, and the schema is PES, and from there we can see the list of tables. In this case, I only have one table right here. So then from here, then you can start playing with the data and creating your dashboards. So let me see if I can create a dashboard here, a very basic one. So this is my table. Let me see. I want to see order date and how many quantities we ordered per each date, right? Like that. Okay, so this is now our dashboard, and it's doing sum of quantities right here. So you can drill to each date and see, okay, on 2024 January the first, we had this many quantity ordered, the same thing on the second, third, and so on and so forth, right? So you can see your dashboards here. All right, you can now do whatever thing you want to do with your dashboards, and you can create your visualizations and do much more robust stuff. Okay, so but from the ingestion point of view and transformation point of view, this is what I wanted to show you, how you can just do your entire pipeline from end to end. And I walked you in this video through that process. So like I mentioned in the beginning, let's just recap. We had our data from coming from the source, we load it to S3, comes to Snowflake, we stage it in the staging layer, we have DBT in the middle, do the transformations, we load it into a transformed table, and then from there we load it to Tableau. Okay, so we have achieved that successfully, and we had Python code help us generate some data. So you can have CDC data that continuously loads data to S3 every 1 hour or every 2 days or every 1 day. It doesn't matter. But what happens is every time you get new data to S3, you want to load that data uh, to your DBT model and incrementally load it, right? So that is how you do it, guys. So that's how you implement an end-to-end uh, ELT process with the help of DBT. And remember, DBT is not an ingestion tool; it sits towards the end. So you only get it at it sits at the T side of it. So you use it to transform it. So if you think about it, we extracted our data and we loaded it. So that is the EL part. And then towards the end, DBT finished it for us. Okay, so we have the entire team full and ready to go. Alright guys, so I hope this video was helpful. I will be making more videos into DBT and we'll dig further into some of the basic things that you need to know for DBT to have it running. I know a lot of people struggle with setting it up, and once they get set up, then they don't know what and how to proceed. And I hope this video was helpful in giving you some ideas on how you can use DBT. And if it did, please do give thumbs up to this video and do subscribe to this channel. That is one way of supporting this channel and also giving me an idea of if you guys are liking these videos, and will give me motivation of releasing more. Alright guys, that is all for today. I will see you next time. Bye bye.